And welcome to another episode of Late Night Rambling, the show hosted by me. How to think of you? Basically, my thoughts on gaming before I go to bed. We got a lot of stuff to cover tonight, but I'm gonna have to try to condense it as much as possible because it is really late this time, and I got a lot of stuff to do tomorrow. So, okay. So, first of all, I need to apologize. It's been a while. I haven't put out a video, and I feel bad. But there was a lot of stuff going on. This year, some genius decided to put Anime Expo and Comic Con right next to each other. They're literally 3 days apart. And so I ended up going to AX, that would be Anime Expo, and just sort of kind of a half day at Comic Con. I've spent going to conventions are very expensive and tiresome, and there are a lot of things. They're also a lot of fun, but doing back-to-back conventions, I don't know how some of these other guys do it. I cannot keep up with that. That is just insane. Okay, so also today we've got our first ever listener email from a guy that is actually local to me, and he had some thoughts about my last video. Last subject, I don't know if you guys remember, it was about historical wargaming, and he happened to be a guy who transitioned from GW into historicals. So, proving once again that I do not know what I'm talking about. Because obviously, I don't know if you remember last week, but I talked about a lot of the barriers it takes to historical wargaming and why it's intimidating, at least from my perspective. And of course, someone had to log in and correct me, which I don't mind. So if if you guys ever feel like disagreeing with me, I'm not going to take it personal. Put it in the comments, and we can have a civilized discussion. Now, on tonight's topic, I put a little teaser. I think it was last week, right before AX. Just a quick one, and it was about Age of Sigmar. Now, when I made the video, Age of Sigmar had not come out. There were a lot of rumors, but now it has since come out. It's on the shelf. So I was at the game store today, saw it in all of its, I'll put air quotes, glory. And, well, this video isn't going to be a critique on Age of Sigmar, okay? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't have, I don't sort of have a dog in a fight when it comes to GW, okay? Truth be told, I still buy some GW products, okay? Like their washes. I really like their washes. So I just have to put that out there that I'm not on a full boycott of GW, though I hate pretty much I wouldn't say hate. Hate's very strong, but leaving 40K and leaving Fantasy, let's just say that I have not ever regretted that move. So now that Age of Sigmar is out, there's been a let's see, reactions are hot or cold. People either hate this game to the point they're burning their armies. In case you haven't seen that video, you should check that out. It's pretty hilarious stuff there. Whether you agree with the guy's reaction or not, it was just kind of an amazing statement to just burn an army. Especially, I estimated about, I don't know, was it 60-70% painted? So, wow, that's pretty harsh. To the other responses I've gotten are that people are thinking the game has great potential, and it's they kind of view it as not a complete product. I mean, there's only what two real factions. They've released these war scrolls for the older models, but those are from what I understand, placeholders. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really care enough to research that because I'm not interested in Age of Sigmar. Okay, but from what I've seen, um, it's hot. It's a hot or cold reaction, right? So people either are very excited and are excited about the potential of this game, or other people are just like, well, let's be honest. I mean, if you were a fantasy player, if you look at Age of Sigmar, it's pretty much they pretty much I don't know. I can't think of a bigger fuck you than you know taking a game where it was all about Blue Table Painting mentioned this. It almost had a pageantry. That was Sean's word for it, and that's a good word. I think we should look at it that way with the rank and file, the Napoleonics, and the game had a very distinct look and feel to it, and that was the majority of the appeal. So if you look at what they did in Age of Sigmar, is they took all of that and took a giant dump on that. I know I'm maybe being too harsh, but I mean, really, that's really what it was. Is that they took what people love about fantasy, the rank and the organization, the almost the sort of Lord of the Rings type with the big blocks of guys and you're moving these blocks of guys. It's very um, cinematic battle. I didn't really appreciate when I left. I didn't really like the random charge distances and the pre-measuring and all that. But a lot of people fantasy seemed to have finally come into its own. There was a growing community, maybe not growing fast enough for GW, and so they did this. And so, what is tonight's video about? It's just basically when, for me, this happened for two major systems that I supported, and it's happened in a lot of things. Outside of gaming, a lot of video games have taken titles and completely changed their direction with it, and it's purposeful, and sometimes it's a home run, sometimes it's not. If you look at, for example, just going outside of tabletop games, you look at games like I'll give you one Smash example, which like Tomb Raider, the franchise was pretty much dead at one point. Now I was a big Tomb Raider fan. I've played, I think, every Tomb Raider from start to finish. Yeah. So I was used to the Lara Croft version. In fact, the last version I played was on the 360, which was Tomb Raider Underworld. Oh, you know what? I didn't play Tomb Raider and the Guardian of Light. I didn't play that. But most of the Tomb Raider games I did play. And, what they did with the new Tomb Raider is they completely, they went back to the beginning and redid the story, redid the gameplay. It wasn't much about puzzles as it seemed like, I don't know, kind of like a Far Cry type of game. And people loved it. I mean, people absolutely loved Tomb Raider. I played it, and my reaction was slightly different. I still think it's a good game, but it didn't feel very Tomb Raider-y, if you know what I'm talking about, if you played the old Tomb Raiders, you know that, Um, like it or love it, it was mainly a puzzle game, and the new Tomb Raider was mainly action. I mean, there was just some parts where there were like unlimited bad guys, and this was supposed to be like this secluded island. It really didn't. It didn't make sense to me, but whatever. Overall, it was a success, and so guys like me that love the old Tomb Raider, we get sacrificed because a whole new generation is now introduced to Tomb Raider, and they could give fuck all about the original, and so in that sense, it was very success because it sold a lot of copies, and there's a sequel coming out. As far as video games, there's another example would be Smash Brothers from Melee to Brawl. It's probably one of the biggest examples where the Smash Brothers Melee community was super growing. I mean, there were tournaments and there were well-known people in the Smash community, and it's well documented. In fact, there's a documentary about all the Smash community. But here was an instance where the game was being played to a certain extent which the designers didn't want it to be played, and so they decided to they came out with Smash Brothers Brawl and made it back into a party game, and the community hated it, and it kind of split the community in half. But the Smash Brothers community, the Melee community, is still alive and well, and that kind of leads me up to what to do when your game system takes a sudden turn, and it moves into a direction maybe that you don't like. What do you do? So in the case of Smash, the community is still playing this game. To this day, there are Smash Brothers tournaments at EVO, and locally here we have a bunch of Smash tournaments, and this is a game that came out on the GameCube, son. The GameCube. So that just one option, of course, is if you're into if you're not into Age of Sigmar, there's nothing stopping you from playing 8th. So people would continue to play, just sort of like how the Smash community continues to play Melee, and they've even modded Brawl into a game called Project M, something that I play on almost a daily basis, and sort of fixed all the mechanics of Brawl, and so it's kind of a hybrid between Brawl and Melee. It's called Project M. It's a very good game. It's a community made game, and that should serve as some sort of hope for you guys. I mean, there are plenty of examples where the community has taken something that Games Workshop basically messed up. I mean, for me, it was Blood Bowl. And if you look at Blood Bowl, Games Workshop still to this day pretends that shitty rule book that comes with the box set is the actual rules. When we all know, those of us who play Blood Bowl, it's all about the competition rules, which came out of the Blood Bowl committee, rules commission, excuse me, which is, basically a community-made rule system. Now, it used to be updated every year, or something like that, every couple years. And they would tweak things and sort of, clean up rules and stuff like that, but nothing too drastic. And it's amazing. It's amazing because if you look at the Blood Bowl community, it's completely different from the tabletop community. They, if you're part of the NAF, you will continue to get newsletters. You will the election of the commissioner is a big deal, and NAF sponsored tournaments and everything like that. It's amazing. This is a really cool community to be part of, the Blood Bowl community, and I can't I'm not. I wish I was bigger with them. I wish I was more involved with them, but it's Blood Bowl to me really shines with the playing a season, the campaign rules, and the NAF is more about the one-off resurrection tournaments. And so I'm not too into playing competitive Blood Bowl though, but it's just another example of how the community can get together and save something that they care about. So that is one option for you guys that are not feeling Age of Sigmar. The other option, and this happened to me, is just picking up a new system or picking up different games. For me, one of the biggest ones to hit. Well, I'll just give you the GW example first. I was playing 40K since second edition and loved it. The second edition was amazing. It wasn't balanced. It wasn't a perfect game. I'm not going to say that. But it was a game that was full of possibilities and narratives. You never knew really what was going to happen when you faced an opponent in second edition. And what I really liked about second edition, it was completely different than what 40K is now. I mean, imagine every vehicle having sort of its own movement stats. Armor values differed between what parts of the vehicle you hit. So if you hit the tracks of a Land Raider, it would have a different armor value than the hull, or the turret, a turret or some sort. And damages would be different. They had movement values, so Eldar were faster than say orcs, and I mean there was a lot to the game. It was very complicated, and a lot of people complained about the Overwatch thing, but I think it's pretty funny that Games Workshop brought it back to a certain extent. So people that complained about Overwatch, there you go. But anyways, during second edition, tournaments started happening. People started playing it as people started picking up the game. And so what GW realized is that it wasn't a really tournament-ready system. And so they came up with this new third edition, streamlined edition, and it was a bit of a shock for me, transitioning from second to third. I remember taking the rule book home and being shocked that, for example, rapid fire was now a classification of a weapon. It wasn't a special rule. Before, Marines were the only ones that could rapid fire. Now there were rapid fire weapons. They standardized the moves, so everyone just moved a certain amount. They standardized the moves of vehicles. Of course, they took away the little vehicle cards and stuff like that. Pretty much destroyed squats. They were gone, so entire faction was gone. But the big deal was, and correct me if we're wrong, I think the big deal was that they were coming out with the Dark Eldar. And because in second edition there was no such thing as Dark Eldar, so the third edition came out. It was all about GW was pushing this new system that would include the Dark Eldar, and they had purposely designed this game to be more streamlined. They lowered the point costs of every model, every existing model, so that you would field more of them, and made it tournament friendly. So I tried it out for like a year, and I won. I remember the day I quit. It was at a tournament. I won the tournament, and it just kind of felt empty. I played Sisters of Battle Army. They were called Sisters of Battle back then. Now I don't know what they call them, Witch Hunters or Ordo something, cus Hereticus is what I want. Anyways, I don't know. I just found third edition very predictable. There were problems, huge problems with it. Combat being one of the most brutal things ever. Back in third edition, not 3.5. We're talking straight third edition. If one one model in your unit was in combat, it was considered your entire unit was in combat. So imagine orcs. One orc touching a space marine, boom, all of a sudden you're locked in combat, you're screwed. That sort of thing. And I was I don't know, it just wasn't for me, so I quit. And then I don't know, years later, walked into a GW, started checking out people playing the game, and the red shirt guy comes up to you and he does his best, he does his song and dance. Hey, welcome to GW, blah, 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 blah. That whole thing. And he asks you, what did you used to play? And I was like, I used to play Sister Battle. This is when the Witch Hunters Codex was about to come out, and I saw this army called the Tau and everything. And I was watching people playing. It looked like they cleaned up a lot of the stuff from. It was transitioning from 3.5 to 4th edition, and the combat rules weren't as crazy as they were. And they did some other things that sort of impressed me. And so I was like, fuck it, man, I'll give it another shot. So I did. And then, I got back to Imperial Guard because that was really the first army that I fell in love with back in 2nd edition. I was primarily a Guard player. And I loved the idea of doctrines and all this stuff. The idea of making your own Guard. You can either design them for competitiveness, or you would use the doctrine system to make your Guard fluffy. It would create the story of your homeworld. And I love these little mini codexes like Codex Catachan and Codex Armageddon and stuff like that. And then 5th edition came. 5th edition came, and all that cool stuff went away. They did some nerfing. They introduced, I think they dropped from 6 missions to 3, and they had this really retarded wound system that everyone sort of took advantage of, especially if you were an orc player. And because I had spent so much money, and if you look at my earlier videos, you know that I was collecting Praetorians for my Guard. So not exactly the easiest thing to find or buy, because all that shit was out of print. I had built this army up and I wanted it to work in 5th, and it just didn't. And it really sucked. It really busted my balls. And I was like, I'll play orcs or whatever. And I had a friend of mine basically built my shopping list. And with that list alone, in 5th edition, I was able to just win the majority of my games without thinking. And that's when I quit, because I realized that I wasn't having fun playing 40k. Not at all. It just became, your list sort of did the work for you. No tactics at all. And there wasn't any of the narrative that I liked, And so I quit and got into a game called Dystopian Wars, tried out a bunch of stuff. finally settled on Malifaux. I was getting into Malifaux when it was basically 1.5. Huge Gremlin player. So here we go again. So I get into Malifaux, and if you remember my channel, you can look through the videos. Huge, like Malifaux was going to be my mainstay game, okay? And then again, when M2E came out, and I've never talked to this, publicly, but I was one of the I was in alpha for M2E, and I saw the changes coming down the road, and the fact that the 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 rules team had changed, the artwork had changed. They made a number of changes purposefully. Again, it's this, let's lower the barrier. It's always for these companies, they want to make it enticing for younger players, for new players. So a game like M2E, or a game like Malifaux 1.5, excuse me, was very difficult for people to understand. A lot of the masters, people would say, this is a negative play experience. For example, Pandora, because her playstyle was something like you've never experienced before, right? Imagine, I don't know how many Malifaux players are listening to this, but I'm going to assume that you're not a Malifaux player. But the way Pandora works was she was all about trying to make you go insane. And you felt like that playing against her, because you basically had to take a willpower test before you did any actions, and if you failed it, you would take a point of damage, and Pandora can move around with that every time you failed a willpower test. And so you can imagine how that could be a negative play experience for someone. But imagine the narrative that builds out of that, So it's really cool, like something I've never experienced before, like playstyles like that. And I would play against Pandora players and get my ass beat, but I'd be like, this is really interesting. People that play Dreamer, same thing, had a different sort of mechanic where, things would appear and reappear. You'd be fighting this little kid at one time, and you think you got him killed, and then out comes this giant monster and tears your face off. And game design, from a game design standpoint, maybe that seemed unfair to the other player, but it was really just getting used to playing against these very interesting playstyles. You would learn how to combat these things. But they took these things away in Malifaux. They took a lot of the narrative away, and I'm not saying that the M2E and 1.5 is like Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 8th Edition. In fact, the changes were more subtle in Malifaux, but they're doing the same thing, which is lowering the barrier, the knowledge barrier. If, for example, if we were to play a game in 1.5 and you were a new guy, and I say, I'll play Dreamer. Well, I'm just a fucking douchebag if I did that, because I'm just gonna do things that you won't even understand, Or if I played Colette, I would that Colette player could do things that just broke so many things, not just in Malifaux in general, but just like in game physics. These were very different playstyles that lent to the background of that character. And when you start thinking of game balance, or new player ability, and you start simplifying that character, that of course that faction or that character is going to lose that narrative feel. So both in the case of 40K and Malifaux, I just sort of stopped playing. Now I played M2E like about a year ago, and I found that a lot of it is still Malifaux, right? And it is a good game. I'm not going to say that it's a bad game. It's just not what I liked about the original M2E and or 1.5. And I as far as 1.5 goes, um, I was heavy into it. I had um, started a web comic. I'd done a number of things, um, aside from being a henchman, teaching people how to play. Like, I had invested a lot, and that's one thing that is so difficult about this situation for Age of Sigmar players is, you guys have invested, probably close to thousands of dollars, and for GW to just like end your system, it's I know I've been through similar situations. It hasn't been as, I think the closest I would say is between second edition and third edition 40K for me. Um, and like I said, I stuck with it. I tried, but ultimately, you could try to justify this as much as you want, but I mean, if you're not having fun playing the game, just you know, it's better to just end it now. And I mean, because there's so many different games out there, guys, um, that you should, you know, give a second look at. They're like any genre you can think of. There's a game system out there. So basically, my advice to you is, one, you could take the route of Blood Bowl, take the route of the Smash community, where you just continue to play the game that you love, and invent your own forums, and come up with your own rules update. I mean, this happens. It happened with I remember Blue Table Painting just mentioning with D&D, with Pathfinder, and we have Blood Bowl, and we have examples outside of that too. So I mean, it is a viable option to keep playing Eighth. If that's the game you love, keep playing it. Things can happen. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to check out something real quick here. There we go. The other option is, why not check out all these other games? If you really love the rank and file system, I mean, there is Mantic. You can do that, and there are a lot of historical games that are awesome and are cheaper to play. That will still give you that feeling, you know. And it's always good to sort of broaden your horizons. Once I left GW's system, I realized that what a lot of these game developers are doing, really cool, is they're playing around with different mechanics. Uh, I I know a lot of people talk about GW sculpts, but I mean, when I look at the sculpts of Corvus Belli, when I look at the sculpts of Spartan Games, I'm like, GW stuff is just not, in my opinion, it's overrated. It really is. I mean, there are companies that are doing amazing sculpts, and you just got to get out of the grimdark every once in a while, Get out of the grimdark. Anyways, so that's my perspective. Like I said, I really can't comment on the game. I don't have any interest in playing it. It just doesn't seem like a 4-page rule system rule book. I mean, come on. Rivet Wars is more I think Rivet Wars rule book. The rule book is a lot bigger. So, all right, let me see here. All right, so we're gonna move on to comments, and this is from a guy named Paul in Los Angeles. So there wasn't any actual comments on the historical videos. This guy decided to email me because he says he doesn't do the Facebook or YouTubes. And right off the bat, you could say, "Well, it sounds like you're a historical gamer." Anyways, he gives it's a pretty long email, so I don't want to read it all. But basically, he started gaming in 1994. Well, I started gaming in 1990. I want to say 1991 or 92. So we're about the same in this. And he started with 40K, Mordheim, Necromunda, and an obscure game called Legions of Steel by Global Games. Never heard of that. That's awesome. 2008, he picks up Warhammer Fantasy and then got back into... So he took a break for a while from 98 to 2008. Wow, 10-year break from gaming. And so he talks about getting into Warhammer Fantasy. Started collecting dwarves and got into Blood Bowl in a big way. You know why? Because Blood Bowl is the best that GW ever did. And I couldn't agree with him more. I don't know. Guys, if you've never tried Blood Bowl, I'm telling you, try Blood Bowl. It is... I have yet to find a game that is better than Blood Bowl. Sorry, guys. Alright. And he started talking about the, sort of his history with Blood Bowl. And then he got into Malifaux. Wow, this guy sounds a lot like me. It's kind of like looking in the mirror. So, he's talking about how great Weird Games was, and then, starts talking about just kind of a comparison with GW and Privateer Press. So, how does he transform and go into historicals? This is what we're kind of, what I was asking about. So, he says, at Adepticon, maybe in 2009, Warlord Games was in attendance, and they were running good deals for sets of Pike and I don't know how to pronounce this, Shotty? I don't know. So never having played any historicals, not knowing anybody even remotely into historicals, having never heard of the English Civil War, he bought into it. He loved history, that's why he's probably why he bought the starter set. Again, there's that thing, you kind of have to be sort of, history has to be of some interest to you. Probably had nothing to do with the price tag, certainly not to do with ECW or Pike in Shadow Warfare. I don't know. So he talks about getting his first historical figure pack. He took it back when, Pennsylvania, didn't know anybody. He starts putting it together and painting it. Then he starts talking about Gen Con in the 90s and Adepticon. And how much of a breath of fresh air it was to not, go there for 40K. So that's, sort of the transition that he went through leaving GW, going sort of the same route I did. So does that mean I'm going to be into historicals? Maybe. Because this guy is in my area and will be at Strategicon. So, I will probably get in a demo with him and show me some historicals, and I will play. I'm not who am I to refuse a good demo, right? So he lists why he loves historicals. So here we go. Scene is very casual and friendly, sporting and gentlemanly, which is, awesome. There are an inordinate rule sets made by people who don't need to sell toy soldiers. This is a good thing. People are just making rules for games to be, just to represent different historical battles. That is a huge factor and is amazing. Shelf life is good. He can use the same figures in different rule sets. Yes. You can also do that with, technically you can do that with some of the other miniature games, but with historicals, it's really, they really encourage you to find the most accurate representation of your troops. So, and like he says, he now knows more about history. Murica. Love it. So then he lists some of the cons of historical game. He would like to see a more competitive event. I would say Saga is heading that way, and it being close to August, there is an event that my buddy Phil runs, which is called Sagist. You might want to get into, and you probably already have everything you need to play except for the Saga dice and the Saga board, which you can go to the event. I'll have to shoot you an email about Sagas if you're missing sort of a more tournament scene-y things. I would recommend joining the Saga scene in SoCal. And the scene as a whole does not reward aspects of the hobby like painting and modeling to the degree of the sci-fi and fantasy side. Wow, I mean that is a con. Something I didn't even think about. You're right. There's sort of an expectation of, hey, all your stuff has to be painted, but not, hey, if it's painted above and beyond tabletop standard, you deserve a certain award. Again, I think this will change if games like Bolt Action, like Saga, as these games sort of gain momentum, these other what I called the these entry or hybrid historicals start coming into the foray. Now that we've got a group of people that are kind of pissed off at GW again, who knows? Will these people stay out of GW? I don't know. Will they come back? Most likely they might rage quit for a little bit, but come back. That's most likely what most people do. But there's a lot of people that will just totally get into something else. And this is one of those times where, the guys that are like me who are into other games besides GW can really, kind of show why there's so much better stuff out there. And so I would say there is an opportunity here for this scene to sort of grow, and I'll have to bring this up with Phil. You could start with best painted Saga army. That'd be amazing as a prize. Um, anyways, Paul, I will thank you for writing in. It's a very long thing, so I kind of jumped around your post here, but I do look forward to meeting you at Strategicon. And like I said, I will shoot you an email about Saugus, and that might be an event that I might be attending with my own Byzantine army. That's right, I have a Byzantine army, not completely painted, but I've got a couple weeks to get that done for Saugus. So check them out. I'll have to give you more details about this, and I look forward to meeting you at Strategicon. Thanks for the email. So that'll do it for tonight's little episode. Sorry about not posting in a while, but a lot of stuff's been going on in my life. Some good, some really good stuff, and just some, just working crazy hours lately. As far as battle reports, I do have a kind of interesting one that I shot with Mark, which is Incursion. I just have to transfer the vid files to this laptop and try to figure out an editing style for it. But so you can look forward to that video soon. And again, if you guys want to reach out to me, you can always put comments in this video about this subject. Let me know. We'll discuss it in the next ramble under the comment section. And if you don't want your comments seen, you can always reach me at hereticofyou@gmail.com. And well, that'll do it for tonight. And like I said, hey guys, if you're out there and you're struggling with what GW did to you, there are other game systems, and we would love, speaking, I guess, for the entire other game community, we'd love to have you on board. Love to show you how to play. I haven't met a single person who doesn't, even if they don't volunteer for the company professionally or whatever, we're always willing to show off these other game systems because we want the player base. So just think of that. Or if you're going to continue with 8th edition, hey, I wish you guys the best of luck. And just speaking from past experience, I will say that most game systems that have left the evil clutches of GW have done a lot better. So we're going to end on that note, and I will see you on the next one.